I'm John Newcomb. I'm a painter and writer. And when I was young, I had the good luck to live on a tobacco farm in Kentucky with my mother's parents. The way it came about, my father was an architect working in New York, and this was during the Depression. Actually, he was displaced by the Depression and went out to Kansas to set up his own office. That took 4 years, and during that time, he parked my mother, my sister, and me with my mother's parents on this little tobacco farm near Lexington, Kentucky. Those turned out to be 4 of the best years of my life. A few years ago, I belonged to an artist group in Stamford, Connecticut called the Loft Artists, and we were planning a show made up entirely of self-portraits. And I thought about how I could portray myself differently. And I decided to paint myself as I was at 10 years old, living on the tobacco farm, feeding chickens, simple, bright, childish. And that got me to thinking about all the fun I'd had on the farm, my sister and I. And I produced a series of paintings, which eventually became the book, I Remember the Farm. Each day started out with breakfast in the big farm kitchen, the big old cast iron stove, the box full of kittens. We'd talk and plan our day, and meanwhile we had yummy hot biscuits with honey and homemade sausages and eggs. We talked and planned our jobs for the day, and then we went to work. Grandma had to start canning vegetables and fruit for the winter. Grandpa had to cut and store hay, and my sister and I had to feed the chickens and cats. We had an awful lot of cats on the farm. We had one little pair made up of a big white Tom and a little black tabby, and they just kept producing litter after litter. We never had less than 20 cats on the farm at any one time. We did that as our first chore, and then we were free to do things that we really enjoyed. And one of the things that we liked best was picking blackberries out in the pastures. The blackberry bushes grew wild. We'd take our little tin buckets out and to the middle of the pasture where the bushes grew, and we filled our buckets many times in our bellies. And we had great fun also chasing harmless black snakes among the weeds and bushes. Another thing I enjoyed most of all was being in the tobacco tying shed. Now, this was a tobacco farm, and in the summer, when the tobacco was cut, the leaves were taken to a little shed close to the main barn, and the neighbors would come and help tie the leaves of tobacco into sheaves, which were then mounted on laths. And the laths were carried up to the main drying barn and hung on the rafters of that until they were dry, and then they were taken to market and they were auctioned off. But I remember so acutely the smells, the tobacco smells within that shed. Smell plays a big part in the reconstruction of these memories. And this was one of the high spots. You know, the smell of the tobacco shed was just incredible. And we listened to the jokes that the men made. The neighbors came and helped with the tying. That was a wonderful, wonderful high point. Another one was watching the neighbors help bring in the hay. My grandfather would ride the mower and cut down the hay, and then the men would stack the cut hay on hay wagons, and they'd take them to the main barn and dump them next to the barn. They'd make piles about 10 feet high. My sister and I used to jump on the stacks of finished hay, make sure there were no pitchforks in them, and we'd wrestle for a while, and then we'd take a nap on top of the sweet-smelling hay. My grandfather and I spent several really nice warm afternoons fishing in the Salt River. The river ran along the eastern part of the farm, and we'd fish for catfish. There's nothing like the flavor of fresh fried catfish, and the river itself had a calming influence. We had some wonderful afternoons. One of the best things we enjoyed, though, on the farm was riding the old plow horse, Jack. He was 20 years old or so, very old for a horse, but he never complained when we wanted to ride. So we cruised the whole farm, counting cows and birds and cats and rabbits, with the sun on our backs and the slow rocking pace of the ride. It made the whole world seem clean and peaceful. Everything was good. It was full of wonderful smells: clover, flowers, horses, and fresh air. And finally, when winter came, my grandfather would haul the old sleigh out of the shed, and we'd take a dash through the snow. It was very cold, but we were fully equipped with thick lap robes and wool scarves, and we kept toasty warm. All the trees and bushes were bare, but we knew that warmth, love, good food, and happiness waited at home. We'd go back to a cup of hot spiced cider. These were simple times, unlike today. You made friends easily, and neighbors came to help one another. These were the last years of World War II. There were no iPhones, no computers, nothing to complicate your lives. People trusted one another. The kids went out freely to play. It was just a great time. It's good to be alive then. Hard to think of that being nearly 80 years ago, but that's how it was, and it enriched my life so much. Well, thanks for enjoying my old memories with me, and thanks for joining me.